Hi, thank you all for joining us. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that I hope you're all doing well and taking care of yourselves as much as possible, especially those of you that have been impacted by the Southern California wildfires. Um, so thank you all for being here with us today. I'm Heather Gately. I'm the Director of Media and Communications for the Nature Conservancy in California. And I'm here with my colleagues, Mary Beth Benton, Energy Project Director for the Nature Conservancy in California. And she's going to talk to us about TNC's efforts to support California's transition to clean and green energy. And I will also welcome Erica Brand, the Associate Director of TNC California's Climate Program, who's going to join us for the Q&A. So we've already received a lot of amazing questions, but as more come up, please enter them through the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. I also just wanted to mention that this webinar will be recorded and available to view and to share after the event ends. And if you want to check out some of our previous webinars, those are also up on our YouTube channel. Now, I know that many of you are already familiar with the Nature Conservancy, or TNC as we say in shorthand, but just to provide some background. So TNC is a global conservation organization that's been working for over 70 years to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. We are science-led and we employ over 4,000 multidisciplinary conservation professionals, including over 900 scientists. We work in a wide array of ecosystems and cultures in 79 countries around the world, and we work to develop and deploy conservation solutions that work for nature and people. And to scale up our successes, we leverage the global reach of our organization. So to date, TNC has protected over 280 million square miles of ocean and more than 125 million acres of land. And that's just part of what we do. California is key to the Nature Conservancy's success globally. Our state is a biodiversity hotspot, and it rivals the world's coral reefs and tropical forests. We also have the world's fifth largest economy, conservation and climate aware voters, and an innovation culture that has driven world changing advances in technology. So these factors combine to create extraordinary enabling conditions for our conservation breakthroughs. California is a living laboratory where new conservation solutions are developed and shared with the world, and that could not be more true than in the climate space. TNC California works on climate in a number of different ways, from demonstrating and securing nature-based climate solutions to the topic of today's webinar, the clean energy transition and what it means for California to lead. So one example we'll talk about in today's presentation is how TNC has used planning and mapping tools to help inform how energy is planned in the world's fifth largest economy. And we'll also talk about how TNC brought that approach to states across the Western US and North America. So let's first start with a little clean energy history lesson. So as Californians, we are already feeling these effects of climate change, and our policymakers are using our state's economic might and leadership to help combat the worst effects. In 2018, California set a goal to reach 100% clean energy by 2045, thanks to the leadership of our state legislature and then Governor Jerry Brown, who signed the bill into law. And the goal is a critical way that our state is working to address the climate crisis. Not only does California aim to produce most of its own clean energy, but TNC's research indicates that the rest of the American West will benefit from clean energy from California. So today we're joined by TNC's California Energy Project Director, Mary Beth Benton, to talk about the scale of what we need to do, the related challenges and opportunities, the progress being made, and what TNC is doing to help pull this off. So Mary Beth has worked across the public, nonprofit, and private sectors, and she's especially passionate about cross-sector collaboration on complex issues. She holds a master's from UC Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy, and I want to welcome Mary Beth Benton.
Thank you so much, Heather. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. Thank you for joining today's presentation. This is my son. He's 2 years old, and he will be a young adult going out into the world in 2045, right as we're learning if we've accomplished or failed to accomplish the goal of achieving 100% clean electricity that Heather highlighted. So this goal and its deadline has certainly taken on new meaning for me since becoming a parent. And while I think about my family and friends in my work, please imagine with me for a moment an important person in your life, a child, a partner, parent, or friend, in the California that you want them to have in the future. It probably has clean air and clean water and the reliable energy that they will need to make daily life possible. These are the things that TNC is actively working to support through our work. And if there is one thought I want to underscore to you today, it's that at this exact moment, we are choosing their future. And I want to be clear, it's still a choice. We have the tools and the will here in California to transform our energy system for good. We just have to say yes to the big levers that science and research, including TNC's, tell us are key here. So today let's talk about where we are as a society on the road to this resilient and reliable clean energy future, including a key part of that challenge, land use, what has been done, what needs to be done, and what you can do if you're looking to take some steps in your own life.
Mary Beth, sorry to interrupt you. We're just having a little of difficulty hearing you, so I'm wondering if you can just get a
Oh,
little closer to your microphone.
yeah,
Apologies.
yeah, thank you for flagging
Oh,
that,
there you
Heather.
go. I'll
Okay,
jump off now.
I'm back. Thank you. Um, and so one concept I want to talk about is decarbonization. So when we talk about this clean energy future and its relationship to responding to the climate crisis, what we're also talking about is a term I'm sure you all hear a lot, and that is decarbonization, which means reducing or eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from the production of energy or from a process. You'll often hear this in the context of decarbonizing our transportation, our homes, or manufacturing. And many people, yourselves included, if you're attending this webinar, you recognize that we can all take important steps to support decarbonization and the transition to clean energy. For example, when thinking about what steps one can take, a lot of people think about their transit. This is a great thing to think about. Transportation is the largest source of emissions in California, and a lot of that is due to our personal cars. So while some people might think about carpooling or biking, you might also think about electric vehicles. But something we all want to keep in mind, as important as these technologies and innovations are, EVs, as well as things like electric water heaters or electric stoves, these are only as clean as the electricity that powers them. And fossil fueled electricity is still a large part of the energy mix that we're using. And so that's a big part of why it's so important for us to talk about and care about where our energy is coming from. And further, TNC studies and many other studies identify that we need a lot more electricity if we're going to electrify all of these things throughout our lives and our economy. And so given the scale of this challenge, it's imperative that organizations like TNC are committed to supporting the clean energy transition, because we need to see massive changes and support from all sectors to make this a reality. And while decarbonization and the clean energy build-out can be achieved through a number of different technologies, California and many parts of the US are planning for significant levels of renewables, primarily from solar and wind energy projects to accomplish this. In many cases, it's because these technologies are the least cost solutions, at least right now. So this is why at TNC, we focus on how to enable these types of projects and the related electric transmission. And while there have been significant market and technology innovations in recent years that are helping lay the groundwork for making this transition possible, one of the biggest challenges that remains and comes up again and again is finding enough uncontested land for all of the renewable energy projects that will be necessary to achieve the move to clean energy. In fact, under business as usual practices, so the path that we're on today, we expect to need a land area 1.5 times the size of California to fit all the renewable energy infrastructure needed to decarbonize the US by 2050. So as we think about the scale of that and what it means, we can anticipate that there will be land use conflicts with the environment and society, especially without proactive planning to avoid these conflicts. And further, opposition and litigation can drive project delays and costs, slowing down the process or canceling clean energy projects. This next photo is a photo of a natural gas plant. Natural gas still represents a significant portion of California's energy mix. And the longer it takes us to find available land for all of the renewable energy projects, the longer California continues to be dependent on these facilities which create pollution that harms air, water, and human health. And while the energy build-out is critical to responding to the climate crisis, it benefits everyone to protect nature in the process because nature protects us as well. I'll give you a few examples. Intact habitats sequester carbon, and clean air and water is a big part of a big part of this as well as intact habitats recharge our groundwater aquifers. So those are just a few reasons that it's really important to protect nature in this process. So seeing these challenges and opportunities, TNC has been working for well over a decade to help California achieve its clean energy goals as quickly as possible while protecting the natural areas that we all rely on. This story of TNC's work on energy begins 17 years ago in the beautiful and critically important Mojave Desert. What I'm showing you here is a TNC map of the Mojave Desert. The green colors represent ecologically important areas, yellow represents moderately degraded land, and red represents highly converted land. And I'll tell you why TNC made this map. At the time, there were proposals for over 1 million acres of solar projects scattered across the desert, with some parties saying that we needed to be willing to sacrifice areas in green to respond to the climate crisis. So seeing this need to think beyond project by project, TNC did an analysis, including this map, and demonstrated that California could meet its renewable energy goals at the time 7 times over in the yellow and red areas. And while certainly there was more work to be done, such as identify the necessary electrical transmission to unlock the solar that would come from this, this approach opened up new possibilities for how we approach energy planning, and it proved that the equation doesn't have to be climate versus habitat. And importantly, this way of working set the groundwork for the agencies, developers, and NGOs to agree on the future of clean energy development in the desert. TNC's work to show a path forward for energy and nature to succeed together has come a long way since. This is Power of Place, a peer-reviewed analysis that shows how to achieve 100% clean electricity in a high electrification future while protecting natural and working lands. We can do both. TNC did this by combining ecological information with sophisticated energy modeling. And this methodology has been so influential in California that it transformed how the state energy agencies plan for clean energy today. TNC has since replicated this approach across the American West and North America for use in policy environments and at state and federal levels. And Power of Place has also been showcased in energy planning forums and used by other energy researchers because many leaders and stakeholders understand that this multi-benefit type of thinking and working is necessary to pull off this incredible build out. This is one recent example where Power of Place data has been used, the Connected West study by Energy Strategies, Grid Lab, and GridWorks. These are top energy research organizations. This specific study examines the electrical transmission we'll need in the American West for reliability and to maintain costs to meet a high electricity demand future over the next 20 years. And I want to note here that it's so important that planners and researchers are using TNC data for transmission planning because certainly carrying the energy to the places it's needed, often over vast distances without disrupting ecological systems, is thorny and complicated work. And I want to further underscore that this inclusion of TNC's research isn't just important for conservationists and conservation interests. Analyses we've done in California, like this one, this is the Greenlight study, suggest permitting in low impact areas tends to move faster. And we hear this feedback from developers too. So protecting nature to accomplish this build out is not only important for the future of our ecosystems, it's what we need to do if we want to accomplish this build out on time. So to realize this vision for proactive energy planning and least conflict siting, TNC has used our science to create and support important enabling conditions. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. In the policy arena, TNC has helped the state's energy agencies codify the use of environmental data in energy planning. This is an approach known as land use screens. On the market side,
We've helped energy buyers develop and use tools to avoid sensitive areas in their decision making about where they will procure energy. This reduces the risk to their investments as well. And lastly, we've brought our land use expertise to transmission and planning for transmission because we need to get transmission online faster and in the right places. And as a recent example, we've worked with other organizations to get policymakers to plan for more transmission in California's San Joaquin Valley, a critical area for enabling least conflict solar in the American West. So there is significant work and investment underway, and important gains have been made to accomplish California's goals. I want to share a few examples with you. California's voters recently approved a $10 billion climate bond to prevent wildfires, conserve biodiversity, and ensure communities have access to safe drinking water. And the bond includes over $300 million for strategic transmission investments and upgrades. Regarding renewable resources, this summer, California achieved an important milestone of 100 days meeting demand with only wind, water, and solar. And on the market side, California and other states in the West are actively working on how to better integrate Western energy markets, which Power of Place shows supports affordability and more efficient land use. So this transition is possible, and we are all working to make it a reality day by day. So while there are certainly reasons to be hopeful, there are challenges that need to be worked out for California to achieve its goals. This is truly an effort where we need new models of collaboration and innovation among the private sector, nonprofits, and public sector to succeed. As California faces important deadlines, TNC is actively working with our partners and experts across government, NGOs, philanthropy, developers, and energy buyers to identify and provide the next set of scientific insights that will guide energy planning and development. This is all with the goal of building more clean energy in better places and expanding the transmission system while protecting nature. One core principle of TNC's work is focusing on approaches that can scale effectively to other states at the national level and can be applicable globally as well. So that's definitely true of how we're thinking about TNC's role supporting the clean energy transition in California and what we'll work on next. In terms of your role and how you can help, you are already TNC supporters if you're on this call. So thank you for what you're doing and thank you for being engaged, for giving, which allows us to do our work to enable clean energy in California, protect nature, and support communities. You might already be doing some of these other things, but things that definitely make a difference include reaching out to your elected officials, including county and other local entity representatives, to say you want clean energy projects and planning for those in your community. And many of you have made energy decisions in your own lives to electrify things or conserve energy. So thank you for the steps that you are taking, and thank you for your engagement and support of TNC. Um, I want to end with a quote by TNC's chief scientist, Catherine Hayhoe. When she talks about the climate crisis, she talks a lot about hope. And she says, real hope involves being convinced that there is a better future possible if we do everything possible we can to get there. So let's do everything possible we can together. Thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to turn it back over to Heather to hear your questions and continue the conversation with Erica and Heather.
Thank you, Mary Beth. We have so many amazing questions already in, and we got some a lot before we started. So we're going to try to get to everything we can. And if we don't get to your question, apologies. We'll try to we may have to combine a few. So first of all, I just want to, before we start the Q&A, I just want to welcome Erica Brand, Associate Director of the Climate Program and Decarbonization Strategy Lead at TNC in California. So she's going to be joining us for this discussion. Welcome, Erica.
Thanks, Heather. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today to be part of this discussion. Thank you all so much for attending today and for the questions that you've raised. I'm really excited about being on the decarbonization team at the Nature Conservancy in California for a couple of reasons. Just to quickly share, electricity is fundamental to my life, and achieving 100% clean electricity is really critical to California's climate leadership. And the challenge of how to do that, how to run California on clean energy sources, in a state that's a biodiversity hotspot is an ever-evolving set of questions and choices that will shape our future. And I appreciate a challenge that keeps me on my toes. So Heather, I'll turn it back to you to get to questions.
We may have a few questions here that will keep you on your toes. So I'm going to start with you, Erica. So one of the big themes that I'm seeing come through is really around rooftop solar. So how is TNC thinking about rooftop solar? And also it says, one of the questions is, solar on rooftops, canals, agrivoltaics, is distributed energy or utility scale energy better? So those are kind of a few questions in one.
Thanks, Heather. I'll first start with a little bit of terminology. So distributed energy resources are small-scale energy systems that are located near where electricity is used. And they can be multiple technologies. It can be things like rooftop solar that Heather mentioned, small-scale battery storage systems, other types of technologies. Another term in the question was utility scale power plants. And so those are very large power plants that produce electricity in a significant quantity to supply a large area. You can have a utility scale solar facility, wind facility, lots of different types of generation. So when I think about distributed energy resources and utility scale energy facilities, it's not an either or. We definitely need both to achieve 100% clean electricity in the mix of resources. We need small facilities, we need large facilities. We benefit from a diversity in terms of the type of clean electricity produced, when it's produced, what type of technology it comes from. But we also benefit from diversity of locations, having energy produced both in our communities and energy produced in areas that are really rich with renewable resources like sun, wind, or geothermal. As Mary Beth described in her presentation, when it comes to utility scale facilities, because they are so large, planning and siting are especially important to make sure that we're minimizing environmental and societal risks. So as an organization, TNC is invested in a lot of science, looking at the future of our electricity grid. We've done studies, Mary Beth mentioned one called Power of Place, where we actually did look at a scenario where there was higher adoption of rooftop solar and what that would mean for the electricity mix and what how the environmental outcomes would differ. So as an organization, we're going to continue to invest in science and policies that enable clean energy development of all sizes, from rooftop, community scale solar to large scale generation, with the goal of fewer environmental and societal conflicts. And we're going to continue to collaborate with partners and agencies on the policies that allow us to really increase the amount of rooftop solar, community solar, and large facilities to achieve a resilient, equitable, and affordable electricity system. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Erica. Okay, so another question that we had come in is really around transmission. And I think, Mary Beth, you mentioned this. I'm going to give this one to you. So what is the role of electrical transmission in achieving 100% clean electricity? Sorry.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate that question. So, we touched on transmission at a high level in the presentation, but I like to really start by describing it as, you could almost think of it as like the interstate highway system of how we move around electricity from where it's produced to where it's used. Specifically, we think about the sunny, flat places or windy places where energy is being produced, and then moving it to cities or load areas. And a number of prominent studies, including work by TNC, demonstrate that we need significantly more transmission. So even that Connected West study I touched on in the presentation shows that even with the transmission we have today, with planned transmission, that's really going to fall short. So it's so important that we're looking at ways to build new transmission. We're also looking at opportunities to upgrade existing transmission to make it more efficient and more effective. And that we're also looking at ways to use existing rights of way. So there's a lot of really great technologies and methods that are being proven right now. So many of them are working and being applied to help us use transmission more effectively. But we also know we'll need a lot of new transmission. And there's so much more that could be said there. Erica, do you want to add anything on this question of transmission and its role in the future?
I think that was great. Thanks, Mary Beth. Nothing to add.
Great. Okay. Another question that came in. So this is where it kind of gets to the heart of some of the conflicts that have happened in history. So I'm reading a lot about community opposition to renewable energy projects. How is TNC thinking about that? I think maybe Erica, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, happy to. So I think I'll start with recent research by Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, or LBNL for short, in case I use the acronym again, indicates that community opposition is the fastest growing challenge to permitting renewable energy and has become a more difficult issue with time. I think about this issue in a couple of ways. And one of those is that kind of this trend of community interest and involvement in project development and project planning brings attention to actions that are important when planning, siting, and permitting clean energy projects here in California and elsewhere. Some of those things are early communication with interested participants, education about the benefits and impacts of clean energy development, which is really important to share because there's a lot of information out there about what are the benefits, what are the impacts, and what are the risks. And so producing science and data to provide that information to communities and interested parties is really important. Involving the community in decision making and understanding trusted messengers. On that point, the research from LBNL found that civic groups or organizations like the Nature Conservancy and other community and environmental groups are some of the most trusted voices on the need to develop clean energy projects. So as a science-led organization, the Nature Conservancy and our team in particular can contribute to this important discussion about how we plan, where we site, and where we build new clean energy investments by producing new science that helps bring forward the case for clean energy investment and ways and strategies to plan and site this new infrastructure in ways that are compatible with nature and brings benefits to all Californians. Mary Beth, anything you want to add?
No, I think that was a comprehensive answer.
Okay, one question that came in, does the TNC analysis include any unusual new projected electric demand? So specifically related to new data centers to be built to handle AI, artificial intelligence, data processing needs, any of that?
That's a really good question. It's definitely a hot topic in the energy world. It's a big question everyone's asking. One thing that we look at in our research and other energy modelers and researchers are looking at is how to continue to update expected energy demand. So certainly there's new information that's coming in all the time relating to some of the things I think that question touched on. What can we expect in terms of the energy use of things like cloud storage, of AI, but all that to say it's something we're watching that will continue to be updated. TNC did take a high electrification future into account in our analysis, but it is something that will likely continue to be updated in the research world, even in the next couple of years, because it is something that's changing quickly. Erica, do you have any other thoughts on that, kind of the future of how we think about high electrification as a scenario?
I think the only other thing that I would connect is that we are in a time where what's called the load is growing, or the amount of electricity that we need is growing. And it's growing for a couple of reasons. One is something that Mary Beth mentioned in her presentation, which is the electrification or moving different things like transportation or buildings over to clean electricity sources to power them. That is one cause of load growth. Another are things like data centers. So we're in this time where the load is growing, and that means that we're going to need to build more clean energy projects in order to both clean up the electricity system and reduce emissions, but also to meet these new sources of demand. And we're also going to need to make additional investments in expansion in our electrical transmission system to move that electricity. So the growing demand is connected to the need to build more infrastructure to meet that demand. And I wanted to make sure to connect those dots.
Thank you. Sorry, we've got so many questions coming in. I'm trying to like figure out how to sort of put them together. One question I think would, you touched on this, Mary Beth, when you were talking about power of place, but I think this would be good for either of you, whoever wants to jump in. Are there ways to mitigate damage to especially desert environments by building large solar fields? I don't know, Erica, do you want to take this one since you worked on power of place?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So when I think about siting energy facilities in the desert, one of the approaches I think about is how do you avoid impacts, how do you minimize impacts, and then how do you mitigate impacts. And so one of the most important strategies in the desert is looking to where there are places that are already disturbed or degraded by human activities. And the study that TNC did of the Mojave Desert that Mary Beth presented earlier found that there is a significant amount of land in the desert that already has some level of human disturbance or degradation, that where clean energy can be sited with less impact. It's important to prioritize that because desert ecosystems, can be difficult to recover and mitigate impacts to. Ages of vegetation, amount of precipitation. And so it is really important to think through how do we avoid impacts, how do we minimize impacts, and then where necessary, how do we mitigate impacts?
Great. Mary Beth, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's a great summary. And I just wanted to mention too, I mean, it definitely is, there is so much we've learned in recent years on opportunities there, and it is an area of continued research interest, both at the national and state levels. A lot of people looking at this question, both in terms of looking at specific projects and how we plan for projects. So definitely something we can plan to share more information about.
Great. Okay. Okay, so I have a little bit of a combined one. So this is about, sorry, let me just make sure I'm reading the question properly and combining the right questions because, okay, so one question is around, I think you've covered this a little bit when out of the gate, but maybe to reiterate, where do we stand in putting solar panels over state aqueducts? And then it also, I think, dovetails into this larger question of how is the Nature Conservancy participating in the land use planning, including siting of clean energy and all of everything that's taking place in the San Joaquin Valley? I'm going to kick that one to you, Mary Beth. Sorry to leave you hanging.
It agrees with like two-part, both like
Yeah.
what's the opportunity with the aqueducts, and then like what's process is taking place in the San Joaquin Valley, and how does TNC and maybe I'll start with the latter, so I think maybe that might be helpful framing for everyone. So if you've read TNC's Power of Place, or if you've seen reports by the Public Policy Institute of California, often referred to as the PPIC, or even recent news headlines in California, you know that the San Joaquin Valley is critical in a successful strategy to decarbonize California and the American West in a way that minimizes impacts to nature. The Nature Conservancy has long encouraged proactive planning in this region, just given some of the significant changing land use due to policy aimed at bringing water use into balance in the region. As many people know, this is a really significant, large agricultural area in California. And just to give you specific examples, CNC is both been involved in the research on the research side for a long time. Also as part of our work on the California Energy Commission's land use screens. I mean, that's been a place where TNC and other stakeholders have helped the state and other stakeholders identify opportunities for more solar and transmission in that part of California. And we've also been involved in planning at the local level to help communities and stakeholders look at different needs, for the community, including, business, agriculture, water management, and energy, and think about and bring data to those conversations as they're embarking on planning. So those are some of the ways we've been engaged. And I'm sure there's more recent news on some of the progress on the aqueducts. I know this is something that has been a big part of the conversation for a while. Erica, is there anything else you would add there, or any other updates on how that's progressing? It's not something, the aqueduct piece is not something we work on directly in our work, but it is exciting to see that people are innovating in that way.
I would echo that last point. It is exciting to see the work that's being led by different entities, by electricity providers, municipal utilities, academia, to kind of pilot and test these different ways of deploying solar. Aqueducts are one example, photovoltaics or solar that floats on water bodies, and to see the investment from the state in research in these types of solar deployments. We think it's really interesting and important to continue to do to better understand the potential benefits of land sparing or land sharing approaches to solar deployment in California.
Great, great, great. There are a lot of questions around that we're getting around cost. So I'm just going to sort of try to summarize. One of the questions is electricity bills are rising and are a big topic right now. How does what TNC is doing on energy relate to affordability? And I'm going to kick this one to you, Erica.
Yeah. So first, thank you all for the great questions. Scanning through them very quickly. I'm sure the group gathered today has noticed how quickly our electric rates have risen over the past few years here in California. And our understanding is a major driver of the rate increases is spending to reduce wildfire risk in the electricity system. And that's per analysis from the California Public Advocate's Office and a legislative office. So I have a few thoughts on affordability that guide our approach to this work in the energy space. The first one that I want to share is that the state needs to continue the progress towards building more clean energy. Renewable electricity is less costly than that from fossil fueled generation. And so it's important that we continue building the clean energy generation we need to reduce harmful pollution and to help mitigate the effects of climate change. The second thought that I want to share is that as the state works to modernize the electric grid, and by electric grid, I mean the important network of power lines that move electricity, both the large lines and the smaller lines in and around our communities. As the state works to modernize the electric grid to both accommodate moving more clean energy around the system and to make our electric grid more resilient to the impacts of climate change, we have to prioritize policies and approaches that keep electricity affordable for people. I think there is broad recognition of that. And so there's a number of different approaches and ideas that are being discussed in both the regulatory and legislative space in California that we are watching and we are thinking about as we move forward, because it's really critical that as we make this transition to clean energy, it's both reliable and affordable to Californians.
Anything to add, Mary Beth?
I think Erica really said it well. This is definitely a topic that's on everybody's mind. We have to figure out how to, make this incredible leap towards achieving clean energy. We know that there are real costs involved if we don't. So we have to do this. We have to figure out a way to make it sustainable for people in California and nationally. So it's an important conversation, and it's one that TNC is here to support in our research and work.
Great. Okay, so we're getting a lot of really interesting questions around storage. So can you address electricity storage? Here's another question. It seems that so much of decarbonization requires materials that need to be mined and then manufactured, which exacerbates environmental problems. What is being done to mitigate that?
I can
take that one to you, Mary Beth.
Okay, great. I can start to speak to that. And if Erica wants to add anything, that's great. So TNC scientists published a study on lithium extraction in 2022, just seeing exactly what this question tees up coming, and sort of we're all experiencing this in real time and wondering where these critical minerals are going to come from and what that is going to look like. And I should note too that was a 2022 study and a peer-reviewed journal article in 2024. So we can make sure to share those materials with everybody tuning in today if people want to learn more about those. And these were the first efforts to look at potential environmental implications for lithium extraction specifically across the US. The study identified potential impacts to species, ecosystems, and water systems across major lithium areas in the contiguous US. This is 72 proposed lithium extraction sites, to be exact, and across the potential extraction methods. Also looked at economic factors and community implications as well. And one finding is that direct extraction from brine could be a less environmentally impactful way and less water-intensive way to access critical minerals. And that's specific to extraction, but certainly recycling is something really important we're going to need to figure out as well, which that study identifies. So our scientists have been actively participating in cross-sector and scientific conversations across the US on this topic. And our scientists tell us we're sort of just at the beginning of identifying what those implications could be. But that's why it's really important that we're identifying the potential implications now to ecosystems, including water and species. And so then that way we can, monitor, we can both think about how to set up projects for success, how to monitor and make adjustments as needed. Erica, is there anything else you want to add there?
Can I jump in with just a quick follow-up? Because
Yeah.
I may have missed it off the top of what you said. So maybe just to clarify in case I didn't miss it. Can you describe what brine is, like what you mean by brine, and just generally speaking for me,
Yeah.
for the layperson?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of kind of how to how I would explain it. And I know our lead scientist for this report is on this call, so I hope Sophie, I'll do this justice. But a high level way we could think about it is we kind of start with the idea that in many places extraction for other minerals and things it's already occurring, and so in some ways from that substance we can take lithium from that. So it's sort of this idea that if you already have these components that are kind of coming out of another process that's already in play, then you might as well sort of use the components that are resulting from that, and that can be a lesser conflict way to extract minerals, specifically lithium.
Awesome, thank you. That just stood out to me. I'm like, I don't know if I if I have a full grasp on what brine is. So thank you. Okay, so one of the questions that we're getting some themes around are sort of the timing of all of this, right? Like it feels like there's some slow progress. One question is about magnitude of environmental challenges and the slow progress that's been made to date. Are there any new strategies to accelerate progress? And then there's questions around sort of how we're keeping track of energy projects in California and abroad. So I'm just wondering if you can share any resources or things that we can, we as the audience can do to sort of track on our progress.
Mm-hmm. So first, I think I'll start with the second question first, Heather. So the team here today is really focused on energy and decarbonization in California, but the Nature Conservancy has staff that work on energy around the United States and globally. And so we do have colleagues that are engaged in energy deployment in other countries around the world where TNC works. So that's the answer to that question. And then Heather, would you repeat the first part of the question just to make sure that I don't miss any points?
Is there a way to accelerate progress and also to track, like in California, for example, how we're greening the grid and how these kinds of projects are sort of moving? How do we track on that? How do we as a larger audience track on that?
Yeah, great. Okay, so in the last few years, there has been a lot of focus in California on how to increase the pace and scale of both clean energy development and then development of the electrical transmission needed to move the electricity around. So we have seen both the legislature and our state agencies and our transmission operator focused on looking at the processes for how we plan transmission and how we plan clean energy, and what are the opportunities to collaborate across entities to make those processes move more quickly without compromising environmental protection and public engagement in these processes. So there has been a focus on that. And then the California legislature formed a select committee on permitting reform that started at the middle of last year and has really been trying to examine in depth the permitting process for both clean energy generation and transmission in California, to think about opportunities to plan and build that infrastructure more quickly, again, in ways that don't compromise environmental protection. So I feel like there has been increased policy focus and attention on how to move things more quickly by building clean energy in better places. And then there are a couple places where you can track progress. I think one place that I like to go to a lot as a resource is the California Energy Commission, which produces annually information and data about what is the current electricity mix in California. There's a lot of great information there. And then, Mary Beth, are there any other resources that you want to highlight for the group today?
Erica, I think those are great ones. Yeah, I would just echo your point that a lot of state, especially if we're talking about California, there's a lot of the state resources are a great place to go. These are resources that are updated frequently. So especially if you want to see this information that's more real time, that's that build.california.gov, and we can share the link to that in the follow-up to this conversation if people want to take a look at that. That includes sort of a statewide map of options, and you can filter by details like county if you want to see progress. And then Environment California also has a nice resource called Renewables on the Rise, and a dashboard you can view. So those are a couple of resources that come to mind. And yeah, I just wanted to go back to something, Erica, you said that I think is really important, that while we our team focus on policy and markets and this work in California. One thing that's really helpful in our work is we have these colleagues across the American West, in North, working sometimes at the federal level or in other states, sometimes very different state policy environments, and then our global colleagues. And so we're always doing information sharing and case studies, and just really understanding, what are opportunities to learn from each other. And then as I touched on in the presentation, that's a big part of how we prioritize what to work on, is looking at solutions that we believe can scale to other geographies and be applicable.
Thank you. That's really important too. The scalability, I feel like, is kind of where we shine most of the time when we bring our research and sort of apply it broadly. So thank you for highlighting that. I do have a question related to fire. We've had a number of questions about sort of how we think about the impact of the electricity and transmission in our systems with fire. Is there anything you can speak to on that?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So a couple of thoughts. So as we know, electric utility infrastructure is one potential cause of wildfire ignition in California and elsewhere. And we've seen that in a number of fires over the recent years. I think in response, we see the state continuing to invest in efforts to reduce the chance of power line involvement in wildfires to protect Californians. And there's been a lot of developments over the last few years, and I'll highlight a few of those examples. So first, in 2021, the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety was created, which is the primary state agency responsible for reducing the likelihood of utility-involved wildfires. And if you go to their website, there's a lot of opportunities for public engagement and involvement in the work that they do. Second, the state and electric utilities are investing in strategies to reduce risk on the existing system, including installing protective equipment, new approaches to infrastructure maintenance and vegetation management, which is managing the vegetation that grows in the vicinity of power lines, as well as using new technologies and undergrounding, which is burying power lines beneath the ground to reduce risk in specific locations. Third, thanks to the leadership of our legislature, it is a policy of the state that new transmission facilities should be designed to minimize the risk of transmission-triggered wildfires. So essentially what that means is when we're planning for new transmission, that planning needs to take into account wildfire risk. That said, there's a lot more to do to make sure that our electric grid is less vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including extreme heat events, wildfires, droughts, and floods, while meeting the needs of California's future.
Thank you. I feel like I'm asking you like a lot of tough questions today. This is such a, such a complex topic.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Here's another tough question. So we've had a number of questions around our anticipation of having a new administration and whether or not that advances our energy or clean energy plans or puts the brakes on it. Do you have any thoughts on sort of what the future looks like around around clean energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel very fortunate to live in California. California is, our leadership is so committed to this clean energy transition and to addressing climate change and making our energy system and our communities resilient to climate change. And I think this is an opportunity where state leadership is going to shine, and we're going to continue to lead on the transition towards 100% clean electricity. And so, I think about what are the opportunities for our team and TNC to really support and enable and help that transition to 100% clean electricity now and into the next future, and even into the next administration beyond that. So I feel like it is a time for state leadership. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of focus on these issues, and I'm feeling optimistic about the progress that we can make.
Great, thank you, Erica. We have a question about partnering with public-private partnerships. Do we work at all in that, and where do you see sort of opportunity and advancement for clean energy and maybe the combination of public and private sector?
Yeah, Mary Beth, do you want me to start off on this one?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, great. So a lot of the work that we do, especially in policy, is work that we do working with private industry, as well as other nonprofit organizations, even some that represent the clean energy industry. And for me, while I think that is so important, is because these challenges require solutions that are thought about and supported by people with multiple different perspectives and background and knowledge. In the past, I feel like, as an example, some of the science that we've done around the future of the clean electricity system has been improved by us working with private industry to better understand how their facilities work, how their technologies work, what kind of challenges they face in building those clean energy facilities in places with less impact to nature. So I feel like the more that we can learn and work with industry, the better we can make recommendations about how to improve outcomes for nature. And so I found it really beneficial when we've been able to work together on durable policy solutions that result in 100% clean electricity, move us further along, and help protect California's biodiversity. Mary Beth, anything you want to add?
I think that was well said. And I really appreciate it, and just wanted to add on to that, the point around, when we as an organization are identifying potential policy solutions we want to see, it is incredibly helpful and important for us to pressure test those ideas and really think about how they'll work in the real world. Because if somebody says, well, even if it was just a refinement, and somebody says, well, think about this dynamic, or this is one thing we have to consider for market viability. That's the way that TNC likes to work, is we want to make sure that we're leading with the science, but that when we're going forward with recommendations, we're thinking about how they will work in practice. We want to make sure that they can be implemented, and we really want the things we're putting forward as ideas to be successful in the real world. So that is a big part of how we work, as Erica mentioned. And certainly that's a huge part of how we do policy. And then, as we also just talked about at a very high level in the presentation, we have historically shared information and helped energy buyers think about their energy procurement. And this is so important. And even as a national organization, we've helped companies think about how to procure energy and think about factors sort of beyond even just energy being clean, but also thinking about conservation and thinking about community impacts. Because this is really important. I just saw a study recently, or saw a recent report that I believe it's close to 20% of recent offtake agreements were signed directly by large companies. So they play a really large role in procuring energy, and so we're also really want to be a part of those conversations and helping large organizations think about factors they might consider in their energy procurement and use.
Great, thank you both. Okay, so I'm conscious that we're coming up on time, so I want to leave people with there's a number of questions around what can be done. So this is, I'll read one of many that is representative of that. So as a retired mechanical engineer and clean energy advocate, I'm looking for opportunities to continue advocating for clean energy. You mentioned contacting our representatives and making personal changes and continuing to support TNC. Are there any other ways to support this endeavor? So what can people like me do to get this stuff moving?
Erica, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, I would be happy to. I feel like all of the points that you just touched on, Heather, are so important. There's a lot that we can do with our personal choices. When it comes to contacting our governmental representatives, I think about multiple levels. There's a lot related to our energy future that happens at the local level in the cities and the counties that we live in. So I would look there. There's a lot that happens at the state level. So thinking about the state regulatory agencies. And then, of course, your federal representatives. There's a lot that happens at the federal level. So that provides a number of opportunities. Those to me are some of the immediate ones that come to mind. Mary Beth, do you want to add? Do you have anything else that you want to add?
I think that's a great list. And yeah, within that, counties often are updating their general plans. Energy is part of that. So that's a great place to get involved, especially if you're interested in this at a county level. The other thing that occurs to me is like your interactions with your utility. And so there are, well, we talked about, costs are very real, but if you're in a position where you can opt into like 100% renewable option, or they have there's different tiers like that, that is something to look at or consider if that's an option for you. And then energy conservation, I want to kind of step back and again say, I think there are big levers that we're working on across sort of like markets and in a regulatory environment, but it's important for us all personally to explore that. And there are some great public tools that can help you look at your own carbon footprint and think about places you can focus, or you can prioritization, sort of the key word. What do you want to focus on is a couple areas to lower your carbon footprint. So whether it's your commute, or the way you use electricity at home, or the way you consume goods, and the level of that, those are some really good things to look at and explore if you want to do some personal work there as well.
Well, I think that's it. I just want to thank you both. Thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you, Erica, and thank you all for joining us. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the many organizations and individuals who are part of the successes that we have, and that includes many of you. So TNC depends on our incredible community of members and supporters. So I just want to thank you all for joining, and you'll be getting a recording as a follow-up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you everyone for tuning in.